Okay, welcome everybody to the Marketing Automation Solutions webinar, Part 2, the best in ad testing, creative, and reporting. So we have our speakers here today. We have Gerry Routledge, who is the Senior Sales Engineer in Acquisio. We have Brad Geddes, who's a co-founder at AdAlysis, and Rob Lenderman, who's the co-founder and COO of Boost Media. Okay, and some quick housekeeping today. So the webinar is being recorded today, and the slides and the recording will also be made available via email right after this webinar. Please note that the Q&A session will take place at the very end, and feel free to post any questions in the chat, and we will make sure to get to them at the very end. So the agenda today, we have some exciting topics. We have first reporting, ad testing, and then ad creative. We'll first kick it off with some quick poll questions. So firstly, how many accounts does your company currently manage? Perfect. Next, how many accounts do you personally manage? Excellent, thank you. Now we're going to kick it off with Gerry, who will discuss reporting.
Thanks, Madison. Could you go to the next slide, please? All right. Everybody knows about Acquisio's reporting. I mean, we have basically best-of-breed reporting. But the point I wanted to talk about today was how to automate that reporting to the point where you don't actually have to do any reporting yourself. The idea being, you could theoretically take that all that time that you actually spend reporting and get it down to practically zero. I know that when it comes down to that first couple of days of the month when it's time to report on what happened last month, people hate this stuff, and it takes hours and hours. I mean, you're copying and you're pasting and you're gluing, and it's the man days lost are absolutely ridiculous. So the idea being, if you can totally automate the whole thing, or automate 90% of it, then you're working smarter, not harder, and your clients still love you, and you're not working nearly as hard as you were before. So, so let's go take a look at some of the ways you can do this. Next slide. All right, first of all, Acquisio lets you consolidate data from multiple different sources. We're talking, I mentioned before about like this copying and pasting and cutting and gluing and everything. Well, you can automate the actual import of all that data into the Acquisio platform. So besides bringing in your PPC data, you can bring in all the different analytics data, call tracking data, data from second-tier search engines that basically nobody wants to support. You can import that into Acquisio. You can do custom integrations from CRM systems like Salesforce or Sugar CRM or any of these other ones. Basically, all this data can be pulled into Acquisio, automated. It'll be in the databases, and once it's in our databases, you can then put it into your reports by simply saying, show this in the report, and poof, there it is. So again, all that Excel copying and pasting and stuff like that doesn't have to be there. So you can find out more about the out-of-the-box integrations that we have by clicking on the marketplace link at the top of the Acquisio platform, and it'll just show you all the different companies and partners that we have. In addition to that, you can always call your Acquisio account manager. That doesn't cost anything, and you can say, look, I need to get something done. I need to get some data into your platform somehow. Can you help me? I can almost guarantee you we will. So feel free to figure out more, find out more about how to get that data into Acquisio for your reporting purposes. Next slide, please. All right, let's talk about one-to-many report templates. This is a system that Acquisio invented in order to allow you to come up with one simple slide or one simple report that is sent to multiple clients. Could you go through the bills, please? That's it. There we go. The same report 5 times, or as many times as you want. In this case, we're working with a simple template, a style that we've set up. This will be the agency style, but every client gets their own report here. It's the advantage is if you decide to make a change to one report, it affects all of the clients. You can say, I don't like my chart, I want it to become a bar graph or something like that. Boom. You modify all the reports simultaneously. It's effective, it's efficient, and it's really good for those high-level reports. One-to-many reporting is best when you're saying, show me how we did overall by publisher or by campaign groups or something like that. If you wanted to specify a specific campaign and say, how did this particular campaign work? Well, one-to-many reporting it's not good for that. For that, you use one-to-one. We'll talk more about that as we go on. Can I have the next slide, please? All right. Once you've got your report designed, right, now you want to set it up for recurring delivery. Now, one of the first things you want to make sure you do is use relative date ranges everywhere. The ones that say last week, last month, year to date, that type of thing. And along with those relative date ranges, a lot of people aren't aware that we probably have about 100 or more different relative date ranges available that you can modify and use. If you have clients that have weeks that start on Wednesday, for example, because that's just the way they do things, you can actually have weeks that start on Wednesday in your relative date ranges. And then when you use these, every time you look at the report, it's automatically up to date. It's much better to use a relative date range that, like 2 days ago, yesterday, last week, something like that. It's always better to have that than it is to go in with a fixed date range. Okay, next slide, please. And then, once you've got your relative date ranges up, turn on scheduled delivery so that the report will be delivered to your clients automatically on the date that you choose. It's as simple as saying I want to enable it, specify the first day it should go, and then whatever the frequency is. I want it to go weekly, monthly, daily, whatever. And then you add in the recipients for emails, and the people will receive an email with a link to their report. They click on the link, poof, the report is there. It's as simple as that. Okay, can we go to the next slide, please? Also, think about using the extranet. Instead of delivering the email to people on scheduled dates, Acquisio allows you to set up like a little mini website using our extranet feature, which allows you to give a login to your clients, and they see a completely white labeled view of the reports that you have chosen to them. And it's as simple as providing access to them, just like you would give a new user access in your agency, except you specify it as being extranet only. Then you publish the reports to the extranet. When they log in, that's all that they see. And they don't even see the name Acquisio anywhere. They'll go to youragencyname.clientcampaigns.com, and in there they'll be able to see only the reports you publish for them. It saves a lot of time. You don't get people calling you all the time for things, and it allows the clients to be able to see, hey, how did we do yesterday? You give them a report that says yesterday's data or this week so far as the relative date ranges. And this is really all that they need to be able to see that you're still working for them, and they don't have to call you all the time. And basically anybody that uses the extranet tends to really appreciate it. I think you should consider it. It's free. It's in the system. Just take advantage of it. Next slide, please. And now, I was mentioning one-to-one and many-to-one. When would you use each one? One-to-many is great when you're doing these high-frequency reports, especially if it's something like how we did this week. It's a high-level report, and you can send it out on a schedule every Monday or every Friday, whatever you want, and it just lets the client know how they're doing so far. You can have month-to-date stuff in there and so on. But then when you need deep filtering, like I need to look at this particular ad group, or I need to compare the performance of these two campaigns in two different geos, that's maybe where you want to go to one-to-one reporting, because that allows you to do the special filtering, and it allows you to type in special commentary, obviously, about the performance of certain campaigns. But the point being that if you've got this scheduling available, and it doesn't cost you anything to do it, you just have it go out automatically, you're adding value to the client with no effort on your part at all. It really takes advantage of using the automation in Acquisio, and it makes you look better. So we really strongly recommend that you consider playing with these types of ideas, these schedules. Don't be afraid to use the extranet and tell your clients about it and say, you want to go in and see how we're doing it in a given time? Go on in, here's a login just for you. So anyway, it makes you, like I said, it makes you look good, and you don't have to work hard to do it at all. So that's it. That's all I have to say about reporting.
All right, so let's get into some ad testing. Can you flip the next slide, please? So what we're going to walk through here is I'm going to talk, this is Brad, I'm going to talk about the framework and the data, the metrics behind ad testing. And then Rob's going to go next and talk more about the creative side of the sort of messages you really want to test and some great examples. So when we think about ad testing, we're really doing ad testing to either get improvements in our account or to get insights that we can use either across our account or even on our website. Next slide, please. So there's really two types of ad testing that you can do. You have A/B testing. It's often called A/B, even though you may have 8 ads in an ad group. A/B testing gives you really good insight into how ads interact with the specific targeting of that ad group. But the insights only apply to that specific ad group. Next slide. But we also have something known as multi-ad group testing. This allows you to combine data across multiple ad groups that can really give you a lot more insights across your brand terms, product terms, whatnot. This can be done with text or image ads. Next slide. So when you think about testing, right, you want to think about what do you really want to improve, right? Is it a single ad group? Well, that's where single ad group testing is really useful. If you want to learn insights across a large variety of ad groups, the multi-ad group testing is actually the way to do things. And so they're really two different testing. We often talk more about single ad group than we really do about multi-ad group testing, and they both have their purposes. Right? For things you want high confidence levels on, such as brand terms, you want to test within a single ad group. If you want good ideas of, say, market research, multi-ad group is great. If you're working with accounts that don't have a lot of data, which means you can never get enough information to really get to statistically significant calculations within a single ad group, multi-ad group testing still allows you to do that by combining data at a pattern level, a label level, an ad line level, whatnot, across multiple segments. Next slide, please. So to give you just an example, right, of how multi-ad group works and some good information you can get from it. So we're going with a client, they're in the B2B sector, and they serve some B2C clients as well, but their primary business is B2B. And I'm reading reviews about the company, just trying to see what people are saying. And I noticed this trend that whenever someone gave them a 5-star review, they mentioned rush shipping in the ad. So next slide, please. So I thought, well, this is a good test. You know, we've got like fast and free shipping, as most e-commerce sites do in our ads. What happens if we add, rush shipping as a different sort of benefit in the ads? So ran a test, just, hey, for fast and free shipping versus rush shipping across several hundred ad groups. Well, that's interesting. So rush shipping is a better click-through rate, a little bit better conversion rate, it's a better conversion per impression, but gosh, the average order value is really, really different, which tells me that I didn't believe an ad did this. It tells me that we missed something very important in the ad test. And since this company sells both to B2B and to B2C, thinking, well, maybe there's a difference in consumer behavior by the same products or different products, whether it's a B2B or B2C, and how they interact to rush versus free shipping, because consumers love free shipping. Businesses want it tomorrow. So went through their CMS system and looked at the product set and said, is this usually shipped to a business address or a residential address? But okay, so let's tag each product as being mostly residential or mostly business. And then let's rerun this test, but let's now segment out the data versus B2B versus B2C. Next slide, please. And so this is where you get really great insights. Is what we see is that for B2B products, using something like rush shipping has a really big impact on the revenue per impression for them. Where B2C, consumers care about free shipping. Right now, this is a minor test example here, except it made a really, really big difference in their bottom line. Because now you're talking the correct language to the user. Right? And that's what's important when we think about ads. Is ads are the only part of an AdWords account users see. Right? Users don't know your targeting, your keywords, your match types. Right? Users see your ads. But the connection point between them searching, right, and your website, and they set that expectation for your website. And so finding simple things like this that can be used across a large part of account, something that you can make large improvements in an account fairly simply. Next slide, please. Now, you don't stop there. This is market research data, right? So what we say is we've got these rules now. Every time we add a product, we need to learn, is this shipped mostly to residents or businesses? Because that affects our ad copy. But then we need to say, okay, well, we've got our branded terms. That's tough because branded terms are both B2B and B2C, and there's not an inherent value there. How do we do this for branded terms, right? That's our next set of tests. RLSAs. You know, maybe we can use RLSAs and affect the ad for the same keywords based upon previous purchase behavior. And then, well, it's a great insight. What if we do it with a landing page? In fact, we've already done the landing page tests, changing landing page shipping methods based upon the ads. And that makes a big difference to their conversion rates on websites. And so that's what we think about. We think of ad testing as how do we get really good insights that don't affect just a single ad group, but that affect other ad groups, easy to do this, and then you can even change things such as email messages and websites based upon this type of data. Next slide, please. So what we need to think about then is how do we really do these tests? How do we get these insights for ourselves? So next slide. So the first thing to do is determine how you want to segment this information. I missed the B2B versus B2C segment initially, right? That's an important segment to how you want to look at this data. So your brand, right, that's a segment. You wouldn't want to combine data from your brand terms versus product terms versus third-party brands you happen to sell versus informational terms. You might not use every single segment, but you need to list out, right, what are the common groupings that the message you're using applies to that entire grouping. Now, for your ad types, you would, of course, never want to combine data from text ads and DSAs together. And don't forget about devices. Users interact very differently to ads based upon device. So you might end up with, here's our brand, text ads, mobile. Here's our brand, text ads, desktop. Here's our product terms, our generic product terms, text ads, desktop, text ads, mobile devices. There's the 6 segments we're going to start testing with. So you got to be careful not making too many segments when you start because you start getting thin data again. But start with some big ones. Then you can get great insights into how things work. Next slide, please. So the first step then, before you really start testing, is to list out what data you need. What are you going to test by? Or what's your criteria for picking winners and losers? So the first question is, what metrics are you going to look at? So some metrics like click-through rate are generally terrible metrics because click-through rate just means someone clicked on your ad. Right? It doesn't mean someone actually stayed on your website more than even 3 seconds. So unless quality score is your issue, right, often using conversion per impressions are a really good metric because you can make a conversion a 3-page visit, a video watched, someone who spent more than 45 seconds on a page. So in conversion by impressions are a really good metric because it looks at the conversions based on the opportunity. Impressions is opportunity. You got conversion rate, return on ad spend, RPI. So you want to list out what metrics do you care about the most. Now, In some cases, you'll test with just one metric. Hey, what's our best revenue per impression? E-commerce, that's all we care about. Other cases, you use two metrics at the same time. One metric's a filter, one metric's to pick winners. So let's give an example. Let's say that you're in lead generation. You want the most leads possible. That's conversion per impression. But you really don't want the most leads possible. You want the most leads possible, but you don't want to pay more than $25 a lead. Now as a qualifier. So then when you look at metrics, you'd say, okay, we're testing 6 ads, and 3 of them are above a $25 CPA. They get eliminated. Your CPA is now a filter because you have a criteria of $25 CPA. Within the 3 that are left over after the filters run, then what's your highest conversion per impression? That would give you the most leads possible under your target CPA. So you want to pick one metric that is your prime metric for testing. But you can use a second one as a filter. If you're in e-commerce, often ROAS is your filter metric. Highest revenue per impression within your filter is your winner. So you can use more than one metric. You need to pick out what you're going to use to test. Next slide, please. So then we need to define minimum data. Right? This is, if ads don't hit this criteria, then you don't want to look at the information yet. And this is where we're going to get to confidence levels in a moment here. But the reason why you need to define minimum data is that theoretically, if you have one ad that has 11 impressions and no clicks, and another ad that's got 11 impressions and 6 clicks, by theoretical confidence levels, you have statistical significant information. But 11 impressions, as anyone knows, is just not enough. Right? That's because with SS, statistical significant information, there's this assumption that data that comes before will be similar to the data that comes later. Right? That you don't have huge deviations in information. Except that as search marketers, we know people behave differently in the morning on a Monday than they do and lunchtime on a Wednesday than they do evenings on a Saturday night. And so our data is not always the same. So you want to say, okay, what minimum data do we need to have before we even look at our information and really examine it? And so some things you've got, I'm going to use CPI here. So you need to define impressions. Conversions are optional. And you might be thinking, well, that's conversion by impression. Why are conversions optional? Because when you define these metrics, you want it to define the minimum that every ad in a test achieves. So what could happen is you might say, well, every ad's got to get to 20 conversions, right, and 1,000 impressions. But if you've got one ad that's just horrible and no one's actually converting on it, then that ad is not going to get to your minimums in a reasonable time frame to really look at it. So you've got some metrics that you must define. They are not optional. Click the rate, just look at impressions, right? CPA, you must look at conversions. But the other ones are optional metrics. Now, everybody must define a minimum time frame. At least a week is generally good because behavior changes over a week. But this is why a lot of companies just do monthly testing. Because that way you're taking 4 weeks that happen, you're looking at the averages across 4 weeks, assuming you don't have major seasonality things happening that month. That's just a good way to look at it. So you could do more rapid testing if you have the data for it, but don't start a test and end a test in the same day or even the day after. Just not enough time. Next slide, please. So next, everyone always asks, well, give me a number, right? What's my minimum data? Give me a number. And you can't. And the reason why is if you've got an ad group that does 10,000 clicks a day and another ad group that does 10 a day, you would never use the same number for both of those ad groups. So, some rough numbers to use, right? If you have low traffic ad groups, minimum 350 impressions or 300 clicks, or if you're testing by conversion, 7's a good minimum number. But if it's a really well-known brand term, right, you might want 1,000 conversions. And so it's always okay to have higher minimum data in these recommendations. It's always okay if you've got the data to use higher numbers. But what you never want to do when you define the minimums is allow one person to make significant changes to your information. So for instance, let's say you're testing by conversion rate, and you've got 100 clicks and 1 conversion, right? 1% conversion rate. Now, the problem here is that if the 101st person also converts, right, you now have 2 conversions, 101 impressions, your conversion rate almost doubled by 1 person. Not enough data when 1 person significantly changes your metrics. So higher is better, but you have to obviously balance that with the traffic you get in your account. Next slide, please. So when you think of confidence levels then, right, like your brand term, this is your most important term. You want 99% confidence. You've got a handful of keywords, and you know what ones they are. They're the ones that if something happens, your boss tells you before you even realize that half the time something's going on. Right? Your sales rep search on this word every day. Right? They're really important words to the company. You probably don't have a lot of them, but you know what they are. Right? These you want 95 to 99% confidence on them. Now you might have some third-party brands you also sell. Right? So in this case, 90 to 95% is a good number. For long-tail words, 90% is great. So there is not one minimum confidence level that you want to test by. Right? It depends on how important that term is to you. Now never go below 90. 80 and 85% are really not very good numbers. But if a term's really, really important, use 99. If it's okay, it's a good word, but it's not super important, then use 90%. But you wanted to find those minimums. Next slide. Now, in addition, you want to define maximum data. What happens a lot with ad testing? Did you make a subtle change? What happens if we add an exclamation point to our D2? Sometimes that might make a difference. Sometimes it doesn't. But maximum data is the data that if the ads get to this and you don't have statistical significance, means you need to just stop. Right? Say, hey, we don't have it. We've hit our max data thresholds. That means our ad test data is so close, just pick our favorite, pause the other one, make a new ad. And so what you want to look at is your statistical significance calculations when you're above minimum information, but below maximum information. Right? So they're both important to define. Next slide, please. So when you also, if you're testing by devices, you've got both mobile and desktops going on. You want to make sure you're testing by device. Mobile users, desktop users interact with ads very, very differently. Now, unfortunately, Google and Bing don't have the right notions in their system of effective device. Effective device is essentially where are your ads running, right? Not your mobile preference and so forth, where are your ads actually running. So, for instance, if you have an ad group, like the first ad group here, it has 2 mobile preferred ads. It has 0, right, all device ads. Theoretically, that mobile device, those mobile ads are running on all devices. So, A, this is important to know because if you've got a mobile website, you're sending your traffic to an MDOT and the user's on a desktop, that's a problem. You have some ad groups. Ad group 2, oh, we forgot to add ads. This happens. It's a fact of managing accounts. So it's not that big of a deal as long as you can identify them, right, to fix the problem. Ad group 3, we've got 1 mobile ad, 2 desktop ads. Well, this means that we're not testing mobile devices, but we're controlling our ad serving by mobile, but we're testing desktops. So you shouldn't just think about your ads in mobile preferred and all device ads. You should really think of them as an effective device. What device are these ads truly running on? Next slide. Now remember, Google often drops D2 on mobile devices. And this is another important caveat when thinking of mobile, is when you write a desktop ad, you're thinking, well, we should end our description line too, that call to action. Not always true on mobile. Now, this is currently in flux, as Google just started showing 3 ads on mobile devices about 2 weeks ago. And your mobile impressions, if you're in position 3 and 4, have just skyrocketed. And your clicks, if you're in 3, have gone up significantly on mobile devices. Google's playing more with how they show extensions and strip out D1 and D2s and so forth. But because your ads are formatted very differently on mobile than they are desktops, you really do want to test them differently, even if it's the same responsive device landing page. Next slide, please. Just go ahead and advance to the bottom of this one. So when we think of our actions, right, what happens is, you know, we set up our ad test. We say we're testing these 2 items here. It could be in an ad group. It could be across multiple ad groups. say, okay, do we have the minimum data? If no, we wait more. If we do have minimum data, then we calculate our confidence factors. If we're below the minimums, we again wait. If we're above the minimums, right, then we take an action. Now, if we're above maximum, we don't have results, we also need to take action. And action's real simple, right? Action is pausing a loser, or you pause a loser and make a new challenger. If you're doing multi-ad group testing, then it's a matter of just, hey, pausing the set of ads that meets this criteria, and then obviously replacing that string with a new string and continue some new testing. And then always, especially with multi-ad group, this is a great insight. It's a marketing insight to use. So you want to look at it and say, okay, what can we learn from this to use in other ads, on landing pages, and other marketing tactics, and so forth. All right, next slide. So if you are doing serious ad testing and you're a Acquisio customer, you can see ad testing data in Acquisio via AdAlysis. Next slide. I'm going to do this real quick. So, at AdAlysis, this is my company, we really believe that computers should do all this stupid math for you, right? It's a lot, and the problem that most people find with ad testing is that they start doing it correctly, and then they realize 98% of the time when they run statistical significance calculations, there's nothing to do. And it gets very frustrating when 1-2% of the time you have an action. People stop testing, right? And testing becomes, they look at an ad group and go, that data looks kind of higher than that data. I'm just going to call this good and pause this loser, right? And all of a sudden, the true stats behind everything are lost. And a lot of bad decisions get made this way. And so we're believers of people are creativity, computers do all the hard work. Next slide. So if you want to follow like the framework I've outlined and you want to automate the whole thing, then take a look at AdAlysis to do that sort of metrics for you and all those calculations. And if you're in Acquisio, you can do all this data inside of Acquisio as well. All right, next slide. So to just recap and just, flip through to the end here. Really it's what do you want to test? Do you have really important brand ad groups? A/B testing, ABC testing in an ad group. You've got some ad groups or a bunch of products or your B2C products. You want to get an insight across all of them, multi-ad group testing, right? Those are the two most important things is, what kind of testing do you want to do? Then you want to define your testing metrics, your min and max data, your segments, and then confidence levels by segment, right? Then run your ad test. When you reach minimums, right, run your calculations. If you have winners, take action. If no winners, wait. Right, when you reach max data, pause test, reset. Right, and then when you've got these multi-ad group winners, right, apply that data to other channels and other places within your account. And this is a great way of setting up ads from a framework standpoint so that you can really ensure that your message is getting better, or if your competition is testing a lot, you're at least equaling your competition, not bettering them in most cases. Because that message, right, ads, the only part of account users see. So this is the marketing message, right? And it's really easy to spend a lot of time on other parts of accounts, but ads really ensure that users are getting that correct brand and interaction with your company. All right, next slide. If you're an Acquisio user and you want to look more about this, contact your Acquisio rep. They know AdAlysis pretty well. And if not, feel free to hit me up. I'm on Twitter right now, BG Theory. All right, so that is it for me. So next we're going to pass it over to Rob, who's going to get more into the actual creative messaging.
Hey, thanks, Brad. Let's take a look at the next slide. Boost is a company that is, let's look at the next slide actually, that's probably more appropriate. Boost is a company that does a lot of things Brad is talking about. We are both software as well as a creative marketplace to help people accomplish some of the stuff that he's looking at. And right now we're going to look at the creative side. Brad sort of took us through the mechanics. Gerry sort of took us through the reporting and things like that. So let's look at the next slide and look at the actual the pieces. So the way that we think about this is you've got keyword development. So Acquisio is going to help you with that. Bidding, Acquisio is going to help you with that. And then you get into the creative. And the creative is really the two parts. It's the mechanics of making sure that you can figure out where to test and actually testing and running the math and doing all that stuff that computers are good at. but it's also the human element and how to fit the human element into the computer side of it so that you get a really well-oiled machine. So let's look at the next slide. So what is it? So if we think about creative optimization, we sort of define it. It is the practice of enhancing and augmenting your messages to improve campaign performance. So that means a whole lot. And at the end of the day, what we're all trying to do is ensure that our performance is to a standard that our company is happy about it. So you may have things that are running that you're happy with where they're at today. You want to improve performance. You may also have things that are underperforming, and you need to get them to a point where they start to work for you. There's a number of keywords that people probably have in their account today. They're not happy with them. They feel like they're underperforming. And primarily the reason for that is that the ad that's being used for that keyword and that audience just isn't matching up. As Brad was pointing out, you look at mobile versus the desktop experience and what types of people are coming to the site. It's very important to line those things up, and that's where the creative matters. Let's go to the next slide. So who should be using this and why? So as you think about this, you're optimizing campaign performance to increase conversion. You want to stand out from your competition. One of the things that happens when you look at your competition, especially if they're smaller, is they're going to start copying you. And when they start copying you, they watch what you're doing, they copy, your performance suffers, their performance suffers, so you want to stay away from them. You also, when you think about creative, you want to look at appealing to the consumer's emotions. You want to make sure that what you're doing is resonating with a human. At the end of the day, we have all this technology and all these things to sit between two humans who are trying to communicate. One is trying to say why they're special and why they're going to meet your needs, and the other one is trying to find things that are going to meet their needs. And the other is diversity. Looking at the diversity of the messaging helps you to determine what's going to work and what's not going to work. If you can imagine your campaigns and ad groups the day you launched them, you had pretty much the same ad in every ad group. And that diversity was minimal, and you didn't learn anything. And so what we're going to talk about is how to increase diversity, which allows us to learn and pick up on things. So let's look at the next slide. We're going to run a pop quiz here. So this is one of the things that Brad touched on and we stress is that you cannot really tell what's going to work and why, typically. Obviously, there's some exceptions, but take a look at these two ads here. Let's run the poll and have people look at these two ads and see which one you think is the better performer. Vote for either one, and then we'll show you the results here and see how right or wrong you were. Okay, so everybody's probably had a chance here. Let's look, and ad 1 is 57%, ad 2 is 43%. So it's not quite even. It's usually a 60-40. So I forgot to mention that. Usually every time we do these polls, it's a 60-40. So most of you picked ad 1. And you're probably picking ad 1 because you said it's got free shipping, returns, it's standard, it's shoes, I want a return on shoes because I got to try them on, all this kind of stuff. So let's look at the results. So there we go. So you're wrong. Most of you are wrong. The answer is the second one. And so while the first one focuses very much on the free shipping and the things that you get, the sort of features, the second one really talks a lot about how it's going to make you feel. And this is where that emotional connection comes in and why it's so important. So shoes are really something that most people, they want them to look good, feel comfortable, although not necessarily in that order. And the free shipping really doesn't get to that. And for the most part, I bet if you went and shopped online right now for this type of shoe, you would find that the vast majority of people out there were using free shipping. And so this is that competitive sort of matching where everyone sort of looks the same. When everyone looks the same, you don't really stand out. So the feeling fabulous, these are for women's shoes, so I don't wear women's shoes, but if I did, I think I would want to feel fabulous about doing it. And the free shipping just sort of is dull. So that emotional connection is the thing to go after. So let's go to the next slide. So let's take a look here. So we've got 3 different ads. So we'll start in the lower left-hand corner here. This is one of our customers' ads. This is what they brought to the table. And if you look at this, it's really boring. It's car rental deals, compare low rates from the top brands, book a car rental deal. Like a computer wrote that. If a computer didn't write that, some guy that spent 3 seconds on it wrote that. It is not very good. Our system and our process is a combination of software, but it's also a combination of creative network of optimizers. And so they came up with a second ad. So the second ad adds a little more information, compare hundreds of cars for no fee, save on your car rental. So it gets me, I know there's volume there. I know that I'm going to save money, or at least they're telling me I'm going to save money. Got it. And we saw CPI, remember conversions per impression, increase of about 7%. Not bad. Considering this is a really big ad group, it was a big deal. But then we said, let's go for the emotional route. And the emotional route here was don't overpay. So one of the things I think all of us can agree is when you're renting something you'll never own, something that doesn't go up in value, something that's gone after you're finished with it, you really don't want to overpay. It's a complete waste of your money. And so this one targets that don't overpay. And so they're trying to tell you that, hey, look, we know we're going to help you not overpay for this thing. It even gets a little bit of competition, like the other guys they're in cahoots with the car rental companies. So you're gonna be charged a higher rate over there, even though they make it look like it's competition. But we're going to make sure it's not, and we're going to make sure there's hundreds to choose from. So it's not 2 or 3 that I'm selectively going to show you. I'm going to show you lots and lots. So this emotional connection. If we can go to the next section here, it's got a, there we go, 62%, whoop, we went back, 62% increase in CPI. So huge, huge win on a big ad group, big increase by going the emotional route. So this is a tactic that you can use in a number of areas. It doesn't work everywhere, but it's a tactic that works in a number of places to help you out. So let's go to the next slide here. So how do we do this? So one of the things that is hard about creative is understanding what to do. It seems simple at first, right? Oh, I'm going to write some ads, I'm going to write some really good stuff. And you sit down, the box comes up, it's blank, and you go, oh no, I don't know what to do. And you're not sure where to start. So one of the things that we do, our tools help us do, but a way to think about it is analysis that tries to look at words in the ad copy that are driving performance. So this is a really simple example here. You can see color is the click-through rate, and size of the bubble is frequency with which it occurs. So you can feel confident in it. So one of the things you would look at here is you would say, look, things like range and money and a few things like that seem to be overperformers, but they're not used that often. And maybe they should be. So one of the tests that you could be looking at running is to say, what's the context for the word money being used or range being used? Can I use that in future tests to improve the performance? Let's go to the next one. Okay, so the other thing that you have to do is when you have those big boxes that are just blank, is you have to break the problem down. So this is really important in terms of how do you break a problem down and attack it in such a way that you can understand what you're trying to do and understand what you're trying to test. So we think about it like this. As we look at DKI, the benefits, the value proposition, the risk mitigation, features, capitalization, calls to action. One of the tactics that you can use here, and we'll talk a little bit more in a second about the approach, is to say, I'm going to attack a call to action in this test. I'm going to attack a value proposition in this test. And so focusing on that will help you to understand what you're trying to accomplish, and it won't be such a daunting task. So let's look at the next one here. So how do we want to do this? How do we actually go about doing this? It's easy for us to talk at a really high level and say, well, you can just do it. But the reality is that it's hard. And so let's talk through that process now. So this is really important for you to understand how to do this so that you can implement it in your company or in your group or by yourself to ensure success. So there's a couple of challenges you're trying to solve for. One is scale. You have a large account. Where do you test? How do you test? How do you do it at scale? Knowing why things are successful. It does you no good. I'll repeat that again. It does you no good to improve performance and not learn from it. Because what's going to happen is in future tests, you will create mistakes and repeat errors. And so not only when you increase performance do you learn something, when you don't increase performance, you also learn something. So it's important to get the learnings out of it so that you can do the right thing going forward on an ongoing basis. High ad fatigue, that's anywhere from competitors copying you, like the free shipping. If you're on Facebook, you know what that means. Monitoring, so part of this problem is looking at where to test and when to test and why. And then obviously the increasing performance. That's why you're doing it. So let's go to the next one. So what's the process? The first step is prioritizing. You have 1 million ad groups, 100,000 ad groups, even 1,000 ad groups. It's too many. You have to prioritize your work. Our software helps with this. Brad helps with this. Acquisio can help with this by just looking at where the volume's at is the simplest filter for prioritizing. You have to produce it. So this gets back to using the lessons you've learned to produce the creative. You have to test and measure. That's where Brad was talking about it. Acquisio can help you with reporting as well. Test and measure so you can understand what's going on. Then you have to learn. Step 4 is really, really important. If you don't learn, you'll repeat the mistakes of the past. So learning from your tests is the #1. And then 5 is create more. You've learned something. Propagate that out. Find an ad group that's very similar that was running the old ad that you were running against and try the new one there. Try taking just a piece of the messaging and fitting it in where it might fit into the other ad groups. Once you've learned something, use it. Don't just go on to another ad group and start from scratch again. It's a waste of time and energy and money. Let's look at the next one. So, a couple of best practices that you're going to want to follow. This is really important to understand these, especially some of these will drive performance directly. So monitor and optimize your keywords closely. Many of you, when we all started a new business or we started a new account for something, we had a handful of ad groups with a bunch of keywords. You can't really do that. You have to make sure your keywords are closely optimized and grouped because the creative cannot align with those if they're all over the place. Simple example, rental cars versus automobile rentals. It's the same thing to us, but it's not the same thing to a searcher or to the keywords being used. Setting up your account structure is where those keywords are going to come in, but also in terms of your targeting, whether you're targeting geo, things like that. 3 is connecting the ad creative to your landing page. So ensuring that what you're talking about in your ad, as you go from a big generic ads to very specific ads at product levels and things like that, making sure that the ad groups are aligned with landing pages so that when you search on those Prada shoes, you end up on a page that talks about Prada shoes, not women's shoes in general. Have some flexibility. So number 4 is by far the most important one when it comes to improving performance. We have people that come to us all the time and they say, I know what a good ad looks like. I can see it, I can tell. The poll showed us earlier you can't actually do that, but it doesn't matter. They say, I know this, I get it. I can't push my brand anywhere. I have to say exactly the same thing that legal tells me to say. If that's you, push legal. Push people to try new things. By trying new ideas, you will improve performance, and it will be inside your brand. There are things you can say. Brad had a good example about shipping, rush versus free. People can say all day long, we use free shipping. Well, rush shipping is very similar. And so those are examples of where you can push yourself and still maintain inside your brand. The other is mobile. The experience, the people, their expectations are all different. So it's important to understand that. You have to make sure that if you have a mobile optimized website, you tell people about it. By putting in your ad copy that it's phone or mobile optimized, you will drive up performance. We see it time and again. We see consistently 50 to 100% improvement in copy performance when you use those types of words and set expectations. Think about a simple example is you go to a website, it's on mobile, it's not mobile optimized, the menu systems don't work properly, you try to buy something, they're asking you for 1 million different questions to be answered. It's really, really hard. Don't do that. By simply not doing that and telling people that you don't do that, you can drive performance. Let's look at the next one. So I think we're gonna do a poll here. So the question is, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to read it out here. So the final poll question is, which automation solution are you interested in learning more about? So we have A, Acquisio reporting, B, ad testing with AdAlysis, C, creative optimization with Boost Media, D, all of the above, or E, I'm good for now. Okay, perfect. Thanks, everyone. We just have a question period now. If anyone has any questions, feel free to enter them in the chat box, and we will address them. Okay, so we just have a question from the audience, and the question is, I believe, for Boost, and it is, who should I get to write my ad copy?
Sure. So I think everybody should have a little bit of insight into this. But essentially, the way that we look at it is you need to have multiple people doing it. So it doesn't make sense for the person that is managing the account to be the only one that is writing the ad copy. You're too close to it. You're not going to come up with new ideas. You're not going to push it. Remember we talked about diversity earlier, and we talked about trying new things. The best way to do it is to go to the admin, go to your boss, go to all these other people, and have them submit ad copy to you to test. They're going to have a different way about it. The other thing that I like to do is I like to take the person that's newest to the company, newest hire, and ask them. They're going to approach your product from a different perspective than what they've been taught and learned over time internally. So you're going to get some really good ideas out of that. They're also going to give you some words that are going to sort of resonate that you haven't used before. And so that's one of the best ways to do that.
Perfect. Thanks, Rob. We just have one more question, and it is, what do I do about my image optimization?
So I'll take that one. This is Rob. So there's a couple ways to think about this. One of the best ways to think about this is to use your text SEM campaigns as a basis for your images. So as you test things and test ideas in search, what you're doing is you're finding the words that resonate and the themes that resonate, and then replicating those in image is the best way to do that. It's very expensive to test an image initially because the cost to produce is so much higher. So one of the things that we think is that companies should be using search as a way to test theories, to push their brand, to test the market for a new product, all sorts of things, being very nimble, and using those learnings as a way to teach the rest of the company. It'd be really great if we saw people testing in search ideas, and then that idea works and it becomes a billboard on the side of the road. Much, much cheaper to do that than it is to start producing billboards based on like one or two people just having an idea, the way it's historically been done. So the best way is to use search to feed everyone else, and that includes image as well. We have an image optimization product, but primarily those things can come from search for those of you that have an image team internally to produce things, and then you're not flooding them with so many requests that they get overwhelmed. You're giving them very specific feedback on what you need.
And I'll add a little bit to that. So another way of thinking about image testing is there's sort of a couple components, right? It's one, do you care about the image theme, or do you care about the image on a publisher site? So for instance, if you're doing remarketing, right, in that case, you're targeting a user base, right, by a list, not a publisher site. So what you're going to have is you're going to essentially test themes of images, right? This one's our blue theme, our light theme, our one with this call to action versus that one, so forth. And so combining that at theme level is a great way to do it. Where if you're testing on a publisher site, you're really doing more A/B testing on that site. A way that we often go about it is we don't have huge budgets a lot of times is to use, say, like in AdWords, right? They've got an image builder, and quickly use that to do a couple, fast, decent-looking images to get an idea of what resonates best with people, and then to quickly cycle through ideas. And then when you find your best 2 or 3 that you're kind of happy with, right? And I think Rob's idea of using search to feed it's a great way of thinking of what text you need to start with and get some insights for, and then turn to the creative team or a 99 Designs or whoever, right? Boost does this as well, and then create nice-looking images off of some fast, quick information you can get. Because Google's system is not perfect, but it's a fast way of doing it. So you can sort of use a 2-step approach of the amateur design, as long as it follows your brand guidelines, and then the true professional design on top of that with better looking and fully professional creatives.
Okay, thanks guys. Are there any more questions from the audience? Okay, I think we're good. Well, thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. I know everyone has a busy day, first day back from the long weekend for a lot of us. So thanks again, and be sure to download the ebook for the rest of the information. All right, have a great rest of your day.